Hello, fellow Backtrackers. I'm Alex McClellan.
And I'm Mason McClellan.
And we're the Backtrack Brothers. And today we are reviewing the 1984 film The Terminator, written and directed by James Cameron. You know, from like Titanic and Alien and all that types of good stuff. We love some James Cameron on this channel.
I love you, James Cameron.
Love you, James. To start off, we're gonna give just our general ideas, thoughts in a spoiler-free fashion, and then we're gonna start talking about big ideas, and that's gonna include spoilers, and then we're gonna talk about some little ticky-tack things before we wrap things up with the conclusion.
Yes, and we're gonna give a numerical score at the end.
Yes.
So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, you're gonna wanna know what we think, clearly.
Because we're professionals.
Let's get kicked off, Mason. What is your first kind of like general thought, idea coming out of seeing this movie?
Yes, as a 15-year-old who was born like 25 years before this movie came out, it looks very old. Just based on what people are wearing and just like the color grading and everything, it's very 80s.
Everyone's hair is huge.
One thing that did catch me by surprise though is that for an 80s movie, I feel like the effects weren't that bad.
Okay.
I feel like the blood and like the lasers and all that, it wasn't that bad. Now, another critique is that this movie's very dark.
Dark.
I had to actually go into the settings in my TV to turn the brightness up. Because I couldn't tell what was going on.
That's cheating.
I know why they did it, probably to hide like some of the bad CGI, and it did work, but it also caused another problem with a 15-year-old who is very fresh and new eyes.
Yes.
Cannot tell what's going on.
Yeah, that is a problem. And I totally agree with you. I really, especially the flash forwards, that's all I'll leave it at for now. The flash forwards especially, I think you can really tell where the green screen and animatronics and all that stuff comes into play.
And I don't think they show the Terminator like doing anything cool at daytime. I think every time he does a stunt or something, it's always at night. Yeah. And I know when something crazy is about to happen because it goes to nighttime.
That's a good point, Mason. Look at you, very observant. That's a very good point. And so I fully agree with everything you're saying. I would argue you got to see Terminator 2 because that's really where the visual jump happens. And I think T2 is where I think most people, if you've seen both Terminator 1 and T2, you know T2 is the one where this series really took off, you know?
I'm gonna say this now, I'll probably say it throughout the review. I feel like same script, but if this movie was made today, it would be a lot better.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing that bothered me without spoiling this movie is the music.
Yeah.
I feel like some of the music was very... a lot of the music it had like a goofy cartoonish tone, which kind of threw off some of the intense action scenes and it just made it seem kind of silly.
Yeah, it's the over-reliance on the synthesizer.
Yeah.
It's so 80s, and it's literally, I said to my wife halfway through watching it when we were watching it, like, literally, they didn't even try and go for any music from the 60s or 70s. Like, literally, they're like, nope, 80s, that's all we're doing. What I will say is I really like the score when it comes to the more horror aspects of this film. I think
it gets quiet and like the strings, like...
Oh, man, the really high-pitched squealing and scratching sounds in the background. My dog freaked out. She was like... My dog doesn't react much to movie sounds. That was one that got her attention. Yeah, I think that was by far the highlight. But to your point, I was laughing at the soundtrack multiple times in this movie when I should not have been laughing. And part of what really hurts having that soundtrack be so silly is it takes away from this like dark metallic world they're trying to create. You know what I mean? You can tell this is a follower of Star Wars, I think. In my perspective, I feel like this is a grab to try and create that same type of cinematic universe. And it works eventually, but this movie, it feels like there's a little bit of competing priorities and motives in it, you know what I mean? Including the love angle, which I can't really get into without spoiling it, but there's a lot of competing stuff going on. But with this aesthetic, I would want like metal. Like I would want like intense hard rock, like do something like that, you know what I mean? But they don't lean into that. It's
So what is the rating on this movie? Is it rated R or is it rated PG-13?
I believe it's rated R. I think this was before there was PG-13 actually. This is back when it went straight from PG to R, and then there was NC-17, but that's like very, very rare.
I feel like they cut off a lot of the violence. Like they cut the camera away, or they didn't show it, or like, I don't know, again, if that's the cut on CGI, or if that is to like make it more available to the younger audience.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My theory, it's actually funny because I have a point in my notes where I kind of have a knock on this movie when it comes to the action. I think the explosions and the gunfights are good, but any physical violence, or altercation, isn't very well shot or shown at all. Which there's a certain fight where it's, Arnold fighting someone else, and every time they're actually physically supposed to be touching each other, they cut away. And that seems to be what they do a lot. So I agree. There's a lot of, I think, opportunities where, to your point, if they made it today, I think it would show a lot more. And it would be gory.
You don't get a moment where Arnold's just blowing heads.
Correct.
Even whenever he shoots someone, it cuts to the gun. It just shows the gun.
Or if people get shot, it's just little bullet wounds. It's nothing crazy. Coming from somebody who is not great with gore, this is a pretty tame movie. This is a tame movie, blood-wise, for sure. Going back to your point about just how old this movie feels, another thing that makes it feel super old is not only is there a lot of old tech in it, the plot revolves around this old tech. Whether it's the phone book, Yellow Pages, we don't have, they send it to people's houses still, but no one
I didn't even know what that was. I was like, is it just what, did there used to be a list back then of just everyone who's ever existed with every name? Just a hit list, or I was confused.
So the phone books, then the phone booths, and just the pay phones in general, how what's her name? Sharon Connor, Susan Connor, what the fuck is her name?
Sarah Connor.
Sarah Connor. Sharon Connor. She's stuck in that tech club because the phone's there. She's got to sit in the back. She has to pay admission. It's ridiculous. If this movie had cell phones, so many problems would be solved immediately. The cops would be able to go to hold of her immediately. There's all types of situations. It's honestly just best not to think about that. Just don't even worry about that when you watch this movie. But old tech is very, the headphones, the cassette headphones. You know what I mean? Just there's so much old tech in this. It just feels super dated. This movie has aged like fucking sour milk for sure. And now everybody, buckle up, because we are flying full speed into the spoiler zone. Gloves are off. We can do whatever we want, talk about whatever we want. If you haven't seen this movie yet, we highly suggest you go check it out before you see our ratings and see the spoiler discussion. Do we want to give a general letter grade before we kind of... No, fuck that. Got that. Mason, why don't you guys kicked off with one of your bigger revelations while watching this movie?
Yeah, so I'll start negative and then I'll go into some of the stuff
Fair.
I feel like the first 30 minutes I was very confused. There was 4 different storylines you were following, a lot of information being thrown at you. I feel like after that 30-minute mark, the stakes get higher. It was really when Susan was in that club and then Terminator was going after her and then...
Yeah, and that's when he kind of walks in and becomes a part of the picture.
Yeah. I feel like then that's where the stakes get really high.
Yeah.
But I feel like before then it was confusing for me.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And it's something that upon rewatching, the first third makes obviously a ton more sense when you understand what the backstory of Reese is and why he's there. Because really, I think going into this movie, everyone knows Arnold Schwarzenegger is coming back from the future to kill somebody. I think everyone's aware that's what the plot of this movie is. But you don't know about this other guy. You're just who's this naked dude that's now taking pants from the homeless?
Yeah, and then it cuts the cops, and then it cuts to the girl, and
it's a lot of build-up.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of talking, and that's one of the things that is also kind of old about this movie is, nowadays I feel like filmmakers feel the need to explain things a lot clearer than they did back in the day. If you watch an old country western, Clint Eastwood wouldn't talk for 30 minutes, and then this guy's the best actor ever. It's just so different, It's just a very different thing. So that's kind of how this feels for long portions of time. And I also agree it kind of affects the pacing, you know? There's very clear acts in this movie. I think, and you highlighted it, which is great, because I bet you weren't even looking for it. But once that club scene happens, that's the end of Act 1. That is basically, we're getting the whole setup of Sarah Connor getting swept up in this whole thing, and now she's in the arms of Reese, right? And then the second chunk is really when they start digging into things. It's the exposition, and it's everyone talking. You have the cop interrogation. You have all this shit, and it's a lot of talking. And I have a couple of Schwarzenegger scenes where you have the chase scene where they're in the parking garage and go out there, and then you have him performing surgery on himself, which is the part that I can't watch. That is not something I can deal with. So you get a little bit of action sprinkled in, but that middle third is basically mostly exposition, and then the end, some gratuitous sex that you don't need. I do enjoy that, by the way.
I started watching it and I was like, I don't need to watch this. I just skipped the end.
It gets handsy, dude. It gets real handsy. Like usually, like in movies, they keep their hands above board, like try to be respectful. He's just copping a feel and shit. Like it's pretty. We can't show that on here on YouTube, but just go back and watch it yourself.
Which, can we talk about the romance angle real quick?
I would love to.
All right. Do you want?
Yeah, well, no, it's just interesting how they interweave it, and watching it again, you can obviously see more of the seeds planted on a rewatch. It's once again, to your point, they're trying to do so much in this movie.
I don't feel like they need the romance. I feel like if they just took it out, the movie would have been the same.
But then you don't have the angle for sequels. That's the whole angle.
And I haven't seen any of the sequels, so.
Oh, well, so I'll say this. I don't want to spoil anything, but like I said, I think the general consensus is T2 is what really made this franchise super special.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Take it to that next level where there's going to be 10 different shitty movies on it. You know what I mean? I fell off too. I definitely did not keep up once I got to like the 5th movie. It's still just kind of like an interesting thought experiment if you're talking about this guy comes back from the future. You know, it turns out that Reese is John Connor's dad, and you know, the whole idea like, oh, we don't know who the dad is. And it turns out that this is all like John Connor's master plan to make this all work out so that he can be, you know, born.
Yeah.
It's pretty, you know, for your age, I wonder, how do you deal with kind of like that time paradox stuff? Are you interested in that, or does your brain kind of just turn off?
A little bit, but typically, like, I'll just bring up the Marvel movies, for example. When they started bringing time travel in, especially in like every single movie, it got pretty confusing, like which movie takes place when, or like the show Loki, for example, had a pretty big moment happen that would affect a lot of things.
Right.
And then the future products come after that. I'm like, okay, so when did this come out? When the timeline and when, where, and it got confusing.
And that is definitely Marvel cumulatively wore it out.
Yeah.
Now the question is, if you do it in one movie, you know, Terminator, is it too much? And then I think the question is execution. And I agree with you.
It's all about execution. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, I have it in my notes that I don't think they very successfully implemented those future jumps, which is a big part of what you're talking about. You know, I think they should have shown more in that regard of the future world if they really wanted to kind of stitch everything together and make us care. Show us John Connor.
I did like that. Yeah, for real. Why did I see John Connor? That's a really good. I didn't think about that.
Because they want to. It's a sequel. That's why. So that's what I mean. That's what I mean. It feels like this is something. You can tell the motivation of this movie is to be a Star Wars franchise. Because think, just like the end of the first Star Wars movie, I guess you could have left it off there, but there's plenty of cliffhangers.
And even at the end, she's like, the one girl's like, a storm is coming. She's like, I know, and then she drives off. That's clearly a setup.
Exactly.
They probably wrote that. They probably wrote the end of the movie first. They probably wrote like she rides up to the sunset, leading up to the next movie. Yeah. Now what's their movie about?
Yeah, they just trace backwards. Not a bad plan. I'm sure there's a lot of movies made that way, to be honest with you.
But going back to your point about just showing the future.
Yeah.
I liked when they showed like the town struggling and then it got invaded. I feel like that was one of my favorite scenes because you really got a sense of them struggling instead of just hearing about how terrible it was.
Get a glimpse of their world.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wish there was more of that.
Yeah, there could have been more of that.
Yeah, 100%. Whether it's him as a kid, showing him growing up making those bombs that he ends up showing. That could have been the perfect type of scene to include in there.
Yeah.
Next up, let's just talk about the main characters and how you feel about their motivations, how they're portrayed, actors, performances. Yeah. I think it's obvious to start with Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator. What do you think?
I thought he was badass. I think he's a great, memorable villain who... They really showed how he was unstoppable. Yeah. And how, even truck exploding with a bunch of oil in the back couldn't kill him.
Run over, then exploded on him, and he just comes out. It's great. It's just Energizer Bunny moment where he's just never going to stop. He's just pursuing. Yeah. Which is where it's horror movie-esque. And it's part of what I love about it is it feels like Michael Myers. It feels like Jason Voorhees. It feels like that. It makes sense that James Cameron made a very awesome horror movie 2 years later in Alien. It makes sense.
And I feel like they could have casted a better person. Like just this big bodybuilder guy who's bigger and stronger than everybody.
And they asked the perfect amount from him. Arnold, we're not going to ask you to say more than one sentence at a time. Mostly 2 or 3 words at a time. Sometimes we'll ask you to name a type of gun, but that's the most words we're ever going to have come out of your mouth.
And be really, really Russian.
Right. Be just randomly European. We don't know exactly what's going on. Well, so you know he's Austrian, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's Austrian. But you can, I mean, his accent is just so iconic. I mean, everyone knows that accent. You know, is it cool kind of seeing the origination of lines like, I'll be back.
I'll be back.
And things like that. Is it cool?
Yeah, it is. I was like, oh, I heard that before.
Oh, I'm sure you've heard that many times. And he just drives the truck straight in. I do love that. But once again, shitty effects. It's so obviously a dummy behind that desk. When you look at that truck comes in, it's so easily just like an inflatable guy. Yeah, it just like floats up.
I want to talk about Sarah Connor though, because I thought she was a pretty good protagonist. Like she starts off pretty like unsure about things.
Yeah.
Very like she needs her friend to tell her what to do.
She's a shitty waitress. She is doing a terrible job. She's doing a horrible job. None of them is former server. I'm not trying to be uppity like, oh, anyone can do that job. It's a difficult job. She sucks at it.
They couldn't have got a more unsure person to be a waitress. Mm-hmm. But by the end, you realize because of her whole like meeting Reese and learning from Reese, who I thought was a good character for her to learn from, she became more confident in her decisions and just her plan. Which is great.
Yeah, you want to see that progression. Yeah. And what's funny is, you know, both these other leads, other than Arnold, neither of them really became stars. Like, this is really the biggest thing they're known for. And they'll appear a few times throughout the series. Linda Hamilton, who's the actress who played her, she wasn't somebody who, you know, was a huge star, but I agree. I think she's solid. I would describe her as solid. There's a few lines she reads that are hammed up and
how about the final line?
Like the closing line. That's a great example. The one
You're terminated.
The one I picked, you're terminated. That's rough. But my biggest one is when she hears the TV in the bar and they go to change the channel. She's like, "Don't turn that off!"
Don't touch it! Gunman earlier today.
She loses it. And it's really funny to me. But I'm just gonna use this natural transition.
Yeah.
Reese. Holy shit, that guy was on coke. That guy was 100% on coke. He is so amped up, and he is hamming it up. And I don't know if that's exactly what James asked for, but if it was, he got that amped up performance, man. It is wild how intense he is.
I mean, that's kind of his character, though, right?
I hope so. I guess. I can tell he's an intense guy, but he's just got those big, scary eyes, and he's just super physical with her in the beginning. Like, I agree that if I was her, I also would feel extremely threatened. I would not feel like this guy's trying to rescue me. I'd be like, this guy's gonna rape me. I don't know what I get shot or raped. Pros, cons.
He didn't do a good job being very trusting.
No. He's like, yo, listen to me. Do you understand? You gotta listen to me. She's like, just please don't hurt me. Like, God, please. I get it, man. I totally get it. But he obviously, you see the warmer side of him in like the second act where he's like expressing things and stuff. But I don't know, like when he's in the police station on video, and he's like losing his shit. He cracks
He seems like a conspiracy theorist, and like, if you're really trying to convince somebody, you don't act like a crazy person.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, he's got to find her and rip her heart out. That's not a good starting point. Yeah, it's just nuts, dude. But it's funny, I guess I did a little research on him too, and I guess he openly said he never wanted any fame, he never wanted to become huge, so he actually started in a few different James Cameron movies, like he was in Aliens and stuff like that, but it's interesting to see he never really wanted to get too big, which I could see him doing it. It looked like he's got like physical build.
But
like an 80s action star.
He's hot?
I have no issue saying he had a very nice body. While we're talking about bodies, I forgot to mention.
Here we go.
No, how did we not talk about Arnold's body? Holy shit, dude. That man is built. That is like, first off, not natural. That is ridiculous. Like, you hear like the perfect form is like that V, right?
Yeah.
Like you got like the shoulders that comes down to a nice tight waist. That man is a W. Like he literally has like two backs. That's how big this guy's shoulders are. And then it comes down to a waist that's smaller than like my wife's. It's just not fair. How does that work? And a nice tight buttocks. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that was an opening scene, so we gotta.
Yes, it's just fantastic. It's just what a body, what a man. Do you not feel the same way? Were you not marveling at his pecs when he stood up?
I was not. I was like, this guy's strong. and he fits the Terminator like role of being this big guy.
Saying that he's strong is like saying that Snorlax is chubby. He's fucking massive.
I did have a problem with the action in this movie, surprisingly, for it being an action movie.
Okay.
I thought there were too many chase scenes.
There's a lot of chase.
I would have liked if they included basically only the horror, like, I thought the police station where he broke in and started blasting everybody was great.
Yeah.
I wanted more of that, where it just felt like he could be unstoppable, which towards the end they did, but like when he's in the car just like shooting out of a window, it doesn't really feel that way.
Yeah, no, and I think the biggest thing, so I agree with you. I am not a fan of how much chasing in cars there is in this movie. I'd much rather a foot chase.
Yeah.
But even the foot chases could be boring. A lot of that to me comes down to how it's shot, how many angles you're given. I feel like, especially like when they were getting shot through the tunnel and he's throwing the bombs, I felt like it looked like the same shot just over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think with our, with newer, younger viewers, we're used to faster cuts, more angles, more intensity, faster pace. So when you get in these kind of like car chases that were cool 40, 50 years ago, they're not quite as cool now. We watch that in like our Saturday morning cartoons now. We need something intense. We need like rockets, grenades. We need like something, or just like drive up a wall or something. Like there's gotta be all types of crazy shit. You can't just have cars chasing each other with guns unless it's shot very well. I'm thinking like a Baby Driver or even like Heat. But Heat mixes it up really well where they're bouncing between cars and then they're on foot and then they're in a hotel. Like they're mixing up scenery versus this one, to your point, it's like, all right, he found us, run. And then go, found a location, talk for a while. Oh no, he found us, run. No. Talk for a little while.
That is basically the movie, right?
Yeah, a little bit of a cat and mouse chase for an hour and 45 minutes. Yeah, but the question is, do you find that captivating? And I think this movie, I think the gunfights are captivating. I think the horror sections are captivating. The car chases and the exposition is where people can fall off, and I totally understand that.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very astute observation, Mason. Last final big point that we're gonna cover. How do you think, like we said earlier, there's a lot of different things going on in this movie. Yeah. How do you think they tied it all up in the end? We already established corny final line, but do you think they did a good job, kind of putting the bow on the present and setting you up for further movies?
I think so, and I think that was their intention.
Yeah.
I think their intention was to set up with further movies.
Yeah.
I feel like, the Terminator going away, but knowing that they're not just gonna stop is a good conclusion.
Yeah,
It makes
100%.
you wonder, what's gonna happen in the second movie? Is there gonna be more Terminators? Is there gonna be another bigger one that comes down and goes after next?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And even think what Reese said when he came over. I know this was on my third rewatch. That he mentioned, she said, "Oh, so you came from the future, like from a future time?" He's like, "From a possible future." Think about what that could mean. Not spoiling anything, just tossing that out there. Because I want you to see future Terminator movies, and I kind of am motivated now watching this first one. I definitely want to watch T2 again, and then the question becomes, how far down the line of Terminators do I go? Maybe some of our fans could help us out and let us know which ones we should see, which ones we can miss.
Also, just because I'm curious, same thing for Hunger Games, because we saw the first Hunger Games movie, and I don't know how many other ones I should see.
I've seen number 1 and 2 now.
Oh, you have?
I've seen the last 2. Yeah, well, the second one's a huge drop off from the first one. I'll say that right now.
Got it.
Yeah.
So we have some little complaints, not big major things, but just odds and ends that, we have about the movie.
Yeah.
My first one is, holy shit, those opening credits.
Thank you. That's literally my list of complaints.
We talked about bad opening credits before. I forget I think Spider-Man was one of the movies.
There's so many.
But the text it stays in the same spot the whole time. It just, the letters and the word Terminator just move around slightly.
It's words over letters. It's white words. 2 minutes. It's white words over black and blue letters. It's really bad.
I can't imagine being in a movie theater when all that is playing. Just sitting there silently, just watching that. At least here I can go on my phone, but
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree. It's one of my favorite things about more modern movies is we've ditched that. We integrate the opening credits into the movie in a much better way. And it stinks when you see this, but let's be honest, most people at this point, this movie's 30, 40 years old, they're watching it at home, they're gonna fast forward through it. So it's really not that big of an issue, but If we were stuck in the theater with it, fuck that.
The Terminator, after he gets burned down, looks awful. He looks like, it looks like he's like at 10 frames per second.
Yeah, it's really bad. It's stop motion-ish. It's not. It doesn't seem like real stop motion, but it's like.
I'm confused if it's bad CGI or bad stop motion. It's really confusing.
It's a fair question. I wonder if it's some type of merge of those two things.
Yeah.
I would guess it is, and I agree. It looks terrible. It's one of the things when we were talking about. You're saying the effects aren't too bad. This is definitely one of the movies where the effects are old. Like you feel it. It feels old. Yeah.
I feel like when I say they aren't bad, I'm talking about like. Everything besides that Terminator.
Yeah, I guess.
That I feel like it's passable, like it's not believable.
But it's so much of it is because of the darkness that you were talking about before. Like it's such a cheat. He's cheating the shit out of it. It's so cheating.
And I feel like also the intensity at the end is weird, and it feels less intense compared to this giant Arnold Schwarzenegger versus this little robot that's like moving at 5 frames per second.
I agree. There should have been higher. I think James should have had higher standards for what was going on there. I'm kind of surprised that that's how that was finished. I feel like that should be a rough draft. You know? I don't know if I'll call this a complaint, but just something I noticed. A lot of theft in this movie. Just cars. So many cars stolen. And not only cars being stolen, but from people either in the car or a cop standing next to the car, who Terminator just literally grabs his head and bangs it into the wheel.
That is a great point. I want to see if somebody counted how many items have been stolen.
At least 3 cars are stolen, if not 4. And then they're just like, at the end, they're like, all right, dump it in the river. And they have to do that at least twice. Cars are just obliterated, taken in.
Yeah, he stole those guns. He stole the clothes.
Yeah, we saw 3 different ways to steal a car. Because the one time he hot-wired it underneath. The other time he pulled out the ignition and messed with it somehow else. And then Schwarzenegger ripped off the top of something and shifted something. I want to talk to some mechanics. I don't feel like, I think the hot wire, doable. Seen that in a lot of movies. The other 2, I don't know, those made a lot of sense.
And they had to have the chase scene somehow.
Yes, exactly. So just a lot of theft in terms of cars. Then we're talking about clothes. Literally in the first opening 5 minutes of the movie, he literally rips the dude's heart out to steal his t-shirt, which seems like overkill. They did try and stab him, so to be fair, it became self-defense. But and also another point about these clothes, those guys are not the same size as Arnold Schwarzenegger. Those clothes don't fit.
That is a good point. I didn't think about that while watching the movie.
Oh yeah.
And maybe they're like goth, and maybe they might have really oversized.
They were. I mean, they were oversized, but even on him, they were oversized. Like it should have been like really tight and form-fitting. Like he could barely move his arm and shoot.
You see his belly button sticking out.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been awesome. I mean, he's ripped. It would have looked awesome. Give him a belly shirt. Make him look like Zeke Elliott, the Terminator. The best theft in the whole movie, the gun store. The gun store scene where the guy, for some reason, thinks this is normal. He's buying 5 to 6 massive guns.
And while he's loading the shells, he's like, you can't do that. Instead of physically stopping him or getting out of the way.
Wrong. Bang. Shits the shit out of him.
Like, if he's loading shotgun shells into a shotgun, and he doesn't have an intent to do anything with it.
It's rough. I mean, it's true. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, but that's like someone like walking into a school and stabbing their teacher, and the cops come in and is like, yo, you can't do that.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that.
While the knife is going through him, he's like, just stop it. Like, you can't do
that. No. For the Terminator being a cyborg, you would think he would have better aim.
Yeah.
He takes a lot of bad shots. It seems like he has basically the same accuracy as a normal human being.
That is true, but I mean, he's also like dual wielding.
Yeah,
he cut off the stock to have even like lower control.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I still think he should be able to handle all that shit.
Yeah.
He should be a better driver. I think he should just be better. Just be better, Terminator.
Also, like with him being a cyborg, I feel like besides just making him strong, they could have given him like an arm cannon or
a
like
jetpack
or like a drill for like a hand, like just something like neat like that. Yeah,
that would have been great if during the arm scene when he's doing surgery, if he like put in like a laser cannon, and just all of a sudden now he can like be the Predator and just shoot lasers out of his arm.
But how cool would that be though?
Would have been cool.
They could have just went all out.
Would have been cool.
Sign not to.
Who knows? Maybe something like that happens in a sequel. Can't get out of here without talking about what I think is truly the most important thing in this movie, and that is the pet iguana, who is a star. Do you see his mouth open? Twice?
I still don't get the point of that iguana.
There's no point. There's one jump scare where he's used for. That's
It
totally
doesn't
unnecessary.
lead to anything.
No,
I think
no.
it's like, is it like, does James Cameron have like a secret pet iguana we don't know about?
I think
They just included it in the movie or something?
maybe one of the actresses was like, I'll be in the movie, but I'll get my iguanas in it. And for anyone watching, I think this is good general advice for everybody. If you're making the decision and you're putting yourself out there
Yeah.
to have sexual intercourse with somebody,
Yeah.
take your fucking headphones off. Don't listen to your cassettes while having sex with someone.
And while like headbanging like violently when you're doing it. How
bad
crazy would it be
feel?
if you're like having sex with somebody and they're like, hold on, let me put my AirPod in.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I got a good podcast.
New Travis Scott just came out. I have to listen to it. I'm sorry.
I really had trouble. He must have just not been doing well. She's just like, there's only one way I can enjoy this, and that's listening to my records.
That's just one thing having in a background, like so you guys can both hear it. At least that would be a little bit
I think that's
better.
what a lot of people do. I would suggest if you want to listen to music during that, yeah, it's something you enjoy together, you know? I mean, how far is it from putting on a VR goggles?
Yeah, watching VR porn while having sex.
Well, what's the difference?
Hold on, baby, slow down. It's not synced up with the video.
We can end the video right now, that's fine.
We gotta give the final score.
Okay.
This movie is as good as having sex while you're listening to music.
No, it's not that good. Not that good. So to conclude, this is a nice little transition to the conclusion. To conclude, I'm just going to toss this out there. This is going to be the lowest score I've given a movie on this channel.
Wow, I'm shocked.
Which I know this is a classic. I know we have I'll say potential future family member that requested we cover this movie. I hate to disappoint him, but watching this movie again, it has not aged well. And I, in good conscience, cannot recommend this to somebody under the age of 30.
So what would we be giving this movie?
I'm giving it a 5.5 out of 10. I think it's good for nostalgic purposes. If you truly just want a brainless movie to put on and you want to zone out during the middle third, if you've seen this movie before, I can see why it'd be enjoyable to rewatch or have it on in the background. But if you're just somebody who's never been exposed to Terminator and you're looking for just a good, fast-paced action movie, this is not what you're looking for.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so for me at least, I feel like, again, I'm gonna say this again. If this movie, same exact script, but was made today, I would have given it an 8.
Solid.
I feel like because of the cuts and the direction, sorry James Cameron, but just it came out to a final product where I don't feel comfortable giving it above a 6.5.
I think that's so obviously comfortable you give it a 5.5. I think that's a good score. That's reasonable, and I throw that out there fully acknowledging that T2 is a big step up. So when we cover that, I'll definitely be doing a pros and cons comparison of here's what happened in T2 that made this franchise, that made it so much better than what we're experiencing the first time. Toss it out there. Arnold was great villain. There are awesome segments in this movie, but there are also segments in the movie that are painful to get through, especially on a rewatch. Once you know everything, the idea of listening to 45 minutes of exposition explaining everything you already know is just bad. Yeah. It's not fun.
I agree.
Yeah. So if you disagree, which I'm sure there's some Terminator lovers that could turn this on.
If you disagree, you probably have sex with headphones in.
That's true. Or you're a fucking virgin. Thanks for checking out this video, fellow backtrackers.
Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that.
Yeah, if you got a video or a movie you want us to cover, just let us know in the comments.
Follow Instagram, Facebook, and all of our socials.
Or don't. I don't really give a shit.